of all of our panelists. So when I do mention your name, panelists, if you could just wave and maybe unmute yourself and just say hi. That way people can see you right away, and then I'll read your bio. But let me start with Nicole. So Nicole, if you want to just say hi. Yep.
Hello.
Perfect. So Nicole, I'm trying to figure out all Zoom stuff, but Nicole Hawkins graduated in 1998, and she currently serves as the Chief Communications Officer of the Washington Spirit and National Women's Soccer League. And as Chief Communications Officer, she oversees internal and external communications. She leads content creation, social media strategy, technology, communication relations, and player programs. She's also the president of Nicole Hawkins Communications, which is a boutique communications consulting firm that provides advice and guidance to sports entertainment, nonprofit, corporate clients, and that includes, and this is a great list, the Atlantic 10 Conference, Panera Bread, and WJLA TV, ABC 7. So Nicole is a great panelist, and we're super excited to have her. Now, next, I'll be reading Ashley's bio. So if you could unmute yourselves, wave.
Hey, everyone.
So this is Ashley Miller. As I mentioned, she's the president of DC Terps. She graduated from Maryland in 2008 with a kinesiology degree. And during her time at Maryland, she spent 3 years as a member of the competitive cheer team, so former student athlete, and winning 2 national titles. And upon graduating, she spent the last 13 years working at Monumental Sports and Entertainment, the home of the Wizards, Capitals, and Mystics, and in various ticket sales and service roles. And she is primarily responsible for selling and executing large-scale group outings all across their properties and families, such as Disney on Ice and the Harlem Globetrotters. When the COVID-19 is over, I might need some tickets, Ashley. But thank you so much, Ashley. All right, next I'm gonna go to Michaela, if you wanna wave.
Hi, I'm Michaela.
Michaela graduated in 2016 from the Robert H. School of Business, and with a degree in management from the Smith School, she's currently working as a brand manager in the marketing department of the Washington football team. And her responsibilities include tracking and analyzing consumer insights and market trends, creating cross-functional marketing campaigns, and ensuring brand standards across the organization. And her favorite thing about working for the Washington football team is the camaraderie with her coworkers, being able to contribute to the team that she grew up cheering for, and to work with lifelong fans. So thank you so much, Michaela. We're really excited to have you. Next, we have Kristen Quinn, who graduated in 2005. You could, yep.
Hi.
So Kristen works for the Big East Conference, and she's worked there since 2014 as an assistant commissioner for the Olympic sports marketing and communications. And with Big East, her primary contact for media relations. She's also the contact for marketing operations for various Olympic sports. She's also the secondary media relations contacts for Big East Sports of the men's basketball team. So she has done a lot with Big East, and we forgive you for not being part of the Big Ten, but you seem to have an amazing career.
Kind of an ACC girl, sorry.
Me too. Don't worry, I'm still upset about it. Opinions aside, but anyway, sorry. Next we have Natasha Chris. So Natasha, if you want to wave. Hi. Awesome. So Natasha serves as the program manager for Trust, and the Trust is powered by the NFL Players Association, and it was built to help assist former players by providing them access to resources, experts, premier partners as they explored the next chapter off the field. And most recently, she was the assistant athletic director for student athlete department at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And prior to that, she spent over 17 years as an academic counselor for the men's basketball and football at the University of Maryland under Ralph Friedgen, Coach Gary Williams, and Mark Turgeon. So wow, you have a resume. But as you all can see, we are incredibly lucky to have this panel. I seriously have chills. I am not a sports person in my career, but I'm a sports fan. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to Nicole. So thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you very much. I always love anytime I have the opportunity to do something with and for the University of Maryland, I sign on and I sign on quickly. So I worked in the athletic department all while I was in school. I actually took a year off and worked full-time in the athletic department in the sports information office. And it really changed the trajectory of my career. So, I think that this is fantastic. I love that the alumni associations are putting these wonderful events on, and hopefully, the wealth of knowledge and all of these wonderful people on this panel, I'm hopeful that you'll learn something and find something valuable in what one or all of us have to say. So I'm going to hop, the introductions were fantastic. So I'm going to hop right into the questions. I think that all of us probably at one point or another have, maybe had some issues or struggled with being females in what is definitely a male, dominated industry. I would love to go around the panel and kind of get your insights on what it's like being a woman working in this industry, how you've coped, how you've managed, and importantly, how you maybe tell other young people that are coming up in the industry what advice you would give to them. So I will let anybody who wants to chime in first can go ahead and chime in.
I can start. I've got a
Perfect.
couple of years behind me. I think for me, I think I've been fortunate to be around a lot of women in leadership positions, and that's how I got involved in working in sports. And I was always in the student athlete development, student, community service, and just in those positions that gave people an opportunity to give back and also explore who they were and become better. So it's sometimes I don't really realize that I'm the only female, especially being in college basketball, working with men's teams for probably about 16 years. I worked with either men's basketball or football. So I never had another sport assignment until like 2017. And then I had like women's bowling at UAB along with men's basketball. But, you look around and sometimes it's like, okay, I am the only female on the plane or on the bus. And people always think, okay, maybe are you the trainer? Are you someone's parent? And I'm like, no, I run this. Like, and that's how I had the attitude. And I kind of walked around like I was whoever the most important person in the room was. I pretended that was me. Like, always was where I always acted like that's where I'm supposed to be. And this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Right. So, like I said, I've had some great role models, great mentors at the trust. There are a lot of females. My executive director of the trust is a female, and then also our COO is a female. So that is unique, I think, and different. And so I've been in these positions where I've seen women lead. So it's just been, just watching and listening to what other people are telling me to do, and just going about, just kind of going about my business. Like I know what I'm doing, and this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of us are lucky. I used to do PR for the Wizards, and our president was a woman at the time too. So there were all of these women who, presidents, VPs. So I feel like maybe our experience was possibly a little bit different, especially now, like our experiences back then for some women were, and I'm saying back then as if it was forever ago, but it was like, the 90s. But, our experiences, Natasha, I think we're probably a little bit different than other people, but, I think Maryland did a really good job at like having women. I know Monumental also did a very good job. So I think that we were certainly lucky in our early experiences as opposed to, kind of things that are happening now for sure. Yeah. Awesome.
I'll chime in a little too, kind of like Natasha. I mean, and Nicole, I'm an SID. Conference SID, and I've only had men's sports primarily. Right. I'm secondary men's basketball right now. I have men's soccer. Even at the school level, I had primarily men's sports. I had a little stint where I had women's basketball, women's soccer. But I guess since I'm kind of like in the middle of you guys and Ashley, for example, I kind of never thought that I didn't belong there, I guess would be my mindset. Like I started in the marketing office at Maryland as an intern. I was the only girl. Looking back on it, I guess I never thought about it that way, but I was the only girl. My bosses were men. They were replaced with a female. And right now the commissioner of the Big East is actually a female. And our office is quite diverse. She tries to make it a point to, it's actually, I think it might be mostly girls in our office at that point, but she's made it a point to kind of empower women and lift them. But yeah, to your point, I never really thought about it, that I was different. I just kind of like went in. I mean, I had to go in the locker rooms. I went right in. Like,
right. You just go in and you do the work. You don't even think anything of it, right? Like it's
right. I just went in, put a towel on, please. You have media outside. Let's go. Your 10 minutes is up.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Val Ackerman is the commissioner, isn't she?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So
yes, we're a small office.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
And you've worked with Bernadette, right? At A10. So
I did. And I also worked with Val. I interned for the WNBA, and for my first job for 6 months, I did communications for the WNBA league office. So Val was my boss. Yeah. My first job out of Maryland. So
with Val, yeah. So uniquely, actually, I'm just thinking about in my career, I've worked across a few schools, and at Mercy College, which is Division II, my athletic director was Pat Kennedy, a female. When I got my start at the Merchant Marine Academy, the athletic director was also a female, Sue Peterson. And I guess only at St. John's was my athletic director a male, and Fordham. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of I'm in a middle road.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually unique. I'm a mom, so my problems, I guess, are more that I have to balance. I'm the only mother in my office of young children. So I have a different take, I guess, on the female role. It's kind of a niche to motherhood also.
Right. Absolutely.
I'll chime in.
Who else has some thoughts? Yeah, great.
So I'm also very lucky. It's not lost on me that it's still very much a male-dominated industry, but my boss for 12 of my 13 years at Monumental Sports is a woman. Nicole knows her as well. Jill, she's wonderful. 3 of our people that report directly to ownership, including our general counsel, are women. But I will say I probably notice it the most because I am fan-facing. So I'll be talking with a fan about, the Wizards blowout win, and they'll be like, "Oh, wow, you really do know sports." And I'm like, I do, and probably would have not said that to my male counterpart, but I do. Or it's not unusual where a client will comment on my appearance before they, comment on anything else and different things like that. So I would say more than anything, I'm very lucky to be at Monumental Sports. They pride diversity and inclusion. We have our Women's Development Initiative, which has been huge for my career because I felt like it's really allowed me to be a mentor to other younger women. Because even though I just recently turned 35 and I don't feel old, I have been around in this industry for 13 years now, which is crazy. But I would definitely say for me personally, I notice it a lot on the fan-facing side. So that's always an adventure. And the older I get, the more I learn how to navigate that. And I'm much quicker now that I'm older and more confident to say, like, inappropriate, I'm your ticket sales rep, I'm your service rep, let's talk basketball, let's talk hockey, let's talk Disney on Ice. But that's definitely where I notice it the most.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And Monumental, again, has always been great. I feel like at the forefront of, women diversity. So that's definitely a great place to work at some point in your career, for sure.
Very lucky.
Great. Awesome.
For me, again, I didn't really think of it as a thing. Like, I never thought like I wasn't supposed to be there, like in any room. And I grew up with 3 brothers, so sports were just kind of always in my blood. And I actually played basically on a boys flag football team growing up with my brother at quarterback and me as wide receiver. So I think like there's a reason we're all in sports, and it's because we have that competitive vibe. And
it's not about anything else other than being the best at what you're doing, whether you're beating a guy or a girl in the room, I think. So that's not something that I really think about a lot. And then since you all actually started talking about it, I was like, wow, all of my first bosses all across all of my different internships and experiences getting right into the industry were all women. So I never was like, oh, like this isn't for me because it's so male dominant. So I've been really lucky and fortunate to also have a lot of good like female mentors just through the years. So yeah, not really a thing for me that I think about often.
Right, definitely, which is good, right? Like that's progress, I think, you know, when you're not thinking about it and it's not something that's at the forefront of your mind. It's normal, it's expected, as it should be. So that's definitely progress. I would love to hear, so when I tell people what I do and how long I've been doing it and kind of give them the background of how I started working in sports, people are just always really shocked. And so I always love to hear why women in particular decided to go into the sports industry. Me personally, I was going to be a sportscaster. And so when I came to the University of Maryland, I was like, I'm going to be a sportscaster. That's what I'm going to do. Like nobody could have told me different. And then my second week at the University of Maryland, there was a careers in sports.
Baby, I'm gonna go get the food. Love you.
Can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. The second week I was at campus, there was a careers in sports workshop, and there were all of these amazing people, like the sponsorship guy at Gatorade, somebody from Monumental, Herb Hartnett, who used to be the sports information director at the University of Maryland. And so I found all of these things that I had no idea even existed. So, you know, I went to talk to Herb, and the next day he said, you know, that night he told me, come see me the next day. And I immediately started interning in the sports information office and was there the entire time. So, you know, it was just kind of a fluke. I mean, I had in my head what I was going to do. So I always find people's stories, women's stories about why they entered the sports industry really interesting. So I would love to hear kind of what led you to kind of go down this career path.
I'll start. Kind of like what Michaela said, like sports were huge. Like my grandmother will physically fight someone for Chase Utley. She's the biggest, you know, we're from Pennsylvania. So if you're from the wrong side of Pennsylvania, you're the Steelers fan. If you're from the right side of Pennsylvania, you're an Eagles fan. So it's just, I feel like it was born into me to be a sports fan. My dad went to Penn State. I grew up bleeding blue. Don't judge me. I got it right in the end.
You did.
But it's just, I always loved sports, and I'm not sure I honestly knew that working in sports could be a career, as crazy as that sounds. But in college, my mom over the summer was like, you're doing an internship, you're driving me crazy, go do this. And I got an internship with our independent minor league baseball team. And on the business side of things, I originally wanted to be a physical therapist, and I just absolutely fell in love with the business side of sports. And then that led me to an internship with the Wizards. And I basically told them I'm not leaving. And 14 years later, I really didn't leave. So I could not imagine doing anything else. I just literally, from the time I was born, I still have Eric Lindros jerseys from when I was like 7 years old, and bust them out the few times that the Flyers want to be good. Don't tell my employer that, but yeah, I could not imagine doing anything else at this point. So.
Right. I think that's what people don't understand, the business side, right? You see the 2-3 hours like on TV, but people don't, like a lot of people, we obviously we know, but a lot of people don't understand like how it's a 24/7 thing, and we're always working and we're always preparing for the next game or the next, you know, whatever. So the business side of sports is huge, as we all know, and only growing, really. So yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I'll go. I was a student athlete at Maryland as well, and just getting into the academic side of it and the student athlete development side, it was more about the support I received as a student athlete. And I was like, they used to assess everything, because I went to Maryland 2 years after the death of Len Bias. So there was a whole different direction and interest in for the student athletes. So we did a ton of assessments. Everything I did was always like sports and helping people. Like that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to help people. And being, I think, on the educational side of it, I never really thought about I'm in the sports world. Like it just, I'm there, I'm helping, student athletes, and it's not just about picking classes, like you're helping them navigate through that phase of their life.
Right.
And now I work, at the trust, and we work with former NFL players, and
Right.
I'm like, I guess I still am in sports, but it's all about customer service to me. It's all about being able to help them, get prepared and to move for, through this second career or third career, whatever it is. So, I just had an interest. I just always, I remember being 10 years old and my aunt being the only woman in the room watching football. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. So I used to love watching, professional football and college basketball. And I was a Maryland fan, oddly. I'm from New Jersey, but I, didn't know who Maryland was, and would watch them as well. But, it just is natural. And I think just being a person, like just being a people person and wanting to help others, and, just that's the part of it that connects me. And, the rest of it, everyone's always like, they ask you what you do, especially when I worked in Maryland, and they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, like getting off a plane at 3 a.m. and having to be at work at, 8:30 or 9 o'clock is not cool. It's not fun. And chasing guys around campus to do what they're supposed to do is not fun. But, that you're helping them, and that you're connecting with them. And that's the part that used to keep me going when I was ready to just like pass out or fight somebody.
Right. Yeah. People always think that it's so glamorous. And I think you have no idea what I do every day. You would not think that. Spend a day in our lives, right? Like people have really no concept about what this behind the scenes is all about. And like you said, chasing people around, and the just doing things that probably all of us have those things that we're like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to do that. Or I can't believe I did that. All right. Anyone else want to chime in on this one?
I have I can't believe I did that just right off the bat. Fan cutouts. I don't know if anyone had to deal with those this past year. My fingers were bleeding. I was installing them. I'm like, people don't realize little things like that. Like we don't have a fan cutout installation team that comes in to do that. Like it's people like us who are just going the extra mile and kind of doing whatever it takes. And I think that's my favorite thing about working in the industry is just you have everyone kind of coming together for a common goal on the field, off the field, whatever. And like being a part of something bigger than yourself, I find really rewarding, and helping to shape those memories for people that, they're not going to remember me, but they're going to remember how they felt in that moment with their experience with the team or something like that. And just being a part of that, I think is really special and unique. And you don't find that in a lot of jobs.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Anyone else want to chime in on this one?
I guess I could go. I was on the dance team at Maryland, and I lived in the dorms, Bel Air dorm, which coincidentally, they were just building the Comcast Center when I was there. And my first year was at Cole Fieldhouse. So when I was a freshman, at the end of my freshman year, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be on the dance team all 4 years, but I do want to be behind the scenes. It's my favorite thing. So I guess my spring of freshman year, I took a walk down to sophomore year, I took a walk down to the Comcast Center, which was right there. And I just knocked on the door of the marketing office, which happened to be next to men's basketball at the time. And maybe it's still there. I haven't been back, but I knocked on the door, and Brett Tillett was the marketing director at the time. And I was like, can I help? He was like, what? So it was awesome. I worked for free in the office for like 3 hours every other day. And I don't know if they do this anymore, but because I know in our schools, we don't. I used to get paid $30 just to go to the baseball game and sit there and hand out flyers. And then I guess I got by, and I stayed with the dance team the whole time. So then I operated in marketing, and also I in marketing office, and I kind of I'm a PR major, and I actually, what's funny, Nicole, I didn't even know what an SID was, even though I worked downstairs.
Right.
But I befriended Mark Fratto, who was the PA announcer for baseball, who subsequently became my boss at St. John's years later when he hired me. And yeah, I kind of fell into the SID world because I was a PR major, and I meshed them together, events, PR, marketing, business, all together in one. And here I am. And funny enough, Michaela, I had my, not the best moment, but earlier this month, I somehow became the COVID testing coordinator for some reason, I guess. So the COVID tests would come to me and I would say, you're good for a credential. So that was fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of COVID testing, one of the questions that I have is, obviously we all had to adjust in 2020 into 2021 have been, I don't think what any of us ever could have imagined a year working in the sports industry to be. I would love to hear kind of your thoughts about, just the challenges, how you overcame the challenges of working during a pandemic, and kind of what you think might be, or is there a light at the end of the tunnel for this year after having to deal with what was such a crazy 2020 going into 2021?
Nicole, I'll lead on that because I uniquely was the last sporting event of 2020.
Wow.
So we tipped off at Madison Square Garden at noon on the 12th of March, 2020. And all the other conferences in the country, if you remember, had canceled that morning. Right. But we tipped our quarterfinal game, Creighton St. John. We played a full half, and the entire half, I kept checking my phone. I'm the secondary for men's basketball, so my boss was with Val, the commissioner, and the senior staff. So I was on the court as the main communicator to what are we going to do. And every 4-minute timeout, I know, I assume we're all basketball fans here. Every media timeout, I checked my phone. I was with the officials coordinator, and he's like, "Have you heard?" And I said, "I got nothing." Right. And then finally they went in at halftime, and that was the end for us because the city ordinance said 2:00. We had to get everybody else, and that was kind of the end. Fast forward to this year, working in college athletics. I know it's different from the pro side. We kind of made a bubble for our men's basketball tournament, which is the only money as a non-football. The Big East is non-football. So our only revenue generation is men's basketball. So in order for us to keep our jobs, basically, that men's basketball tournament had to play. We needed the Fox money. So we did everything we could to get the season underway and to plan the men's basketball tournament and to have it not get shut down by COVID. As best as we can. And for me, uniquely, I've been remote. I haven't even seen my office since March 12th. I did all I could do for the men's basketball tournament from my house. I had credentials delivered to my house, wristbands, everything. Got in my car, went to Madison Square Garden like I never left. And that here we are. For anybody that still works in college athletics, if you know, I called it sprawl. All of the fall and spring sports are going simultaneously. So we're about to have 12 championships in 5 weeks.
Wow.
With a staff of less than 20, and we can't travel. So it's going to be a very unique situation. We have a volleyball tournament kicking off in Omaha on Friday. I would usually be there. I am not there. So I have to monitor it remotely. Simultaneously, we're going to have field hockey, tennis, and swimming on the same weekend, plus outdoor track. And then we get into our men's soccer and women's soccer are happening, which should have happened in the fall. And here we are, COVID. But we're just doing the best we can to kind of get by.
And, I think we've all figured out, right? Like we can make it work. I think none of us thought that we would have to make it work, right? But we can, and things went on. You were saying that you were the last event before everything shut down. The NWSL, we were the first sporting league to come back. So we played a Challenge Cup in a bubble. So every team was literally in a bubble in Utah because supposedly it was one of the safest places. And so we were tested regularly and it went off without a hitch. And so the NWSL commissioner, she started her new job last year on March 1st. And then all craziness broke loose. And so she had to do all of these things within like 2 weeks of her starting her job. So it was, definitely crazy. And I think that, we all probably learned, okay, like this isn't ideal, but here's what we need to do to make it work, to get through this really, really challenging time. But again, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel for our soccer team and some of my other clients, which is definitely a positive. The nationals, they kick off, start tomorrow, and so we're seeing hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel where everybody can be safe and get back out and start enjoying these sporting events. So anyone else have any kind of insight or thoughts on how they dealt with or are dealing with the pandemic?
I have a funny anecdote because it's kind of basically, I think we're all probably living something similar, but I'll never forget. So the NHL shut down March 12th. We were supposed to have a game that night. And the next week we were supposed to have a Tom Wilson bobblehead night. And I have never gotten more emails. People didn't care about their tickets. They didn't want refunds. They just wanted to know when we were going to make up the bobblehead game. And I was like, you guys, and at that point, we weren't, I'm sure it was the same with you guys. Like we were so limited on what we could tell people because communication was so crazy. No one had ever been through this before. People were blowing up our emails saying like, we were supposed to have a game that night. And the 11th was when the NBA shut down, and the NHL decided to wait until like 2 p.m. on the 12th to postpone everything. And so our emails were blowing up, but 90% of my emails were about that stupid bobblehead. So it's like, if I have to go to the arena and personally mail everyone a bobblehead just so you'll stop emailing me about that. But I guess at the same time, it's better than getting refund requests. But
right.
That was like my very first memory of the pandemic is that Tom Wilson bobblehead.
I think at the trust, just because we deal with like people, like this is what we do, and we didn't stop. Like we've been home since probably the 12th or the 13th, whatever. It was like a Thursday, and it was like, okay, we got to go. But people still need their services, their benefits, and they're still calling because they're going through a lot. Like this is taking such a mental toll on individuals, and some of the people that we deal with are older. They're 60, 70 years old, but just trying to keep them connected and still give them the customer service that they need and they deserve. We've navigated through it and tried to do the best we could to be business as normal and as usual. Of course everybody has we switched. Everything was like is Zoom or on some type of virtual platform where your eyes are kind of like crossed because you're just kind of over it. But we had to cancel like different events and try to replicate them on a virtual platform. And I think we've done a really good job of not saturating the members with virtual, but try to do a combination of webinars and workshops and things that they can participate in. So I think it's been challenging, but I think that we have done a really good job of still trying to provide that service and the attention to the members that we serve.
Definitely. So I have more questions, but I would love to, if any of our guests in the Zoom today have any questions that they want to ask the panelists as a group or one-on-one, I would love to get your questions as well. So please feel free to put those in the chat, and we would love to answer those. Are there, I don't know if there are any questions in the chat right now.
So we got one.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it, Nicole?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is from the panel, or for the entire panel, and Kaylee would like to know, can you describe your work-life balance and any challenges you may have? Can you tell us about how you handle those challenges? So I know Natasha mentioned earlier. Yeah. Thank you, Kaylee, who's my
It's a very good one.
Oh, wow. Okay. I always wondered what work-life balance really meant, especially working in college athletics. We used to try to say it's like a work-life integration.
Yes.
But it's hard when you go to work at 8 a.m. and you might be there till 10 p.m. Just based on doing your job, or like I said, traveling, and you could be gone, for days. And in Conference USA, we used to leave on a Wednesday night and we wouldn't come back till Saturday after the game. And like being the only female, and then I'm sitting there like by Friday morning, I'm over it. I'm over everybody. I think that you try to listen to yourself and listen to your body. And when I went on vacation, I'm like, I'm on vacation, I'm breaking. But it would be like in the summer or whatever, just try to enjoy what I was doing. And I think having the passion for just helping people and wanting to do the work I did, it helped a lot. But it's definitely a challenge, and you just have to, just sit there, you talk to your friends. And so my friends mostly knew. They were like, well, after October, we'll see you in March. And I'm like, yeah. So, so it's just like you adjust your lifestyle the best you can, and try to take the breaks when you can take the breaks, and just kind of move forward. But it definitely, I still don't know, because I'm used to operating like that. Like, even though I have more of a standard, job schedule now, working at the trust, and you're still wired to like work that way, where you're just constantly trying to go. And then you have to sometimes it'll be like 5:31 and I'm like, slam the computer down, like, okay, I'm gonna walk away.
Right.
It'll be here tomorrow. And you learn that and over the years.
And you have to kind of set those boundaries for yourself, right? I think that, and this is one thing that I do with the young group that I'm working with at the Spirit. I tell them, take paid time off, take this, like, it's okay. Yes, we're busy. We're always going to be busy. There's not going to be a time that we're not going to be busy. So if you don't kind of set up those boundaries for yourself, in the sports industry, it's hard for them. Like, nobody else is going to set those boundaries for you, right? Like, we were, my colleague and I, young, 21 years old, we were with the team the first 3 weeks of March in Palm Beach for training camp. And then we came back, and last week we had 2 events, and then Monday we had another event. So there's literally never any time to take time off, right? It's just, there's always something going on. But I like made her take yesterday off. I was like, don't check your email, put your out of offices on. Like, I don't want to hear a word from you. Don't message me. Don't talk to me. Like, go do something else. And so, I feel like as a leader, I have to help people set those boundaries. It's hard because it's hard for me to set them for myself. But I think that it's very, very important to, even if it's an afternoon, or again, like Natasha said, shutting down at 5:30, you have to have those boundaries in this industry, or else you just won't. And it's very easy to get burned out, because it's never, ever ending. And if you're waiting for it to end, it's not going to happen, because that's not the nature of this business. So you have to kind of protect yourself in that way.
I have to say too, for me, I'm the only, again, working mother in my conference office of young children. A lot of them are, Val has 2 20-year-old children, and no one else has kids other than a few guys and men in my office. So I have a unique situation, and I'm competitive, as Michaela pointed out, and Ashley, we're competitive people. So I want to keep going like I'm a single young female, but I'm not. And I have to make difficult choices, which I feel is a detriment to my progress in the industry. So, for example, I never go, there's an industry thing, NACMA, COSIDA. I never go. I can't go for a couple of days and leave my kids in the summer. Like, how can I do that for a work trip? I have to negotiate babysitting, my husband's schedule, everything else, just to go to an athletic director's meeting that I should be at. But I can't make the argument if I can't get childcare. Or fun times, COVID, I'm doing, for those who were former student athletes, I'm doing player of the week. Currently, I do 7 players of the week for the Big East Conference because of sprawl. And I have a 2-year-old literally sitting on my shoulder, and I'm trying to type and have a full conversation. And yesterday we had a crisis where Providence volleyball got COVID and now can't go to the tournament. I'm trying to make these phone calls at 5:30 while making pasta because it's 5:30 and my kids need to eat. So I compensate by waking up really early to get work done that people during the day can get done because they don't have someone literally on your shoulder climbing on you like a raptor. So, I mean, for me, the positives are they see their mom working, their 2 boys. I'm in a men's business, traditionally men's business, and here I am. But it definitely hurts you a little. And as Nicole said, you definitely have to make your own boundaries. And then just when you make your decision, you're done with it. And that's kind of it.
Yep.
So we have a few more questions that have been coming in, and keep them coming, everyone. But Shannon Chris wants to know, Natasha, what is the most rewarding part of your jobs, both past and present?
Definitely formulating relationships. I'm a big relationship person. It's just part of my personality, even though I am an introvert. No one ever believes me, but I can turn it on when I have to. But just the relationships that I've built over the years, and some of them I still have with like my former students, just, going to weddings, baby showers, all kinds of stuff. And just, I have some that still like, this is my advisor. And I'm like, advisor of what? Like, I'm not your advisor. Like, you're 40, like, stop. Like, I'm not, but it's just, being able to help people. Like, I was on the phone with someone today, and they were just so happy that I called them because it was like perfect timing. Like, they were like, this, I was just talking to my wife about this. I'm so glad you called me. You have made my month. And I was like, okay, well, let's keep this rolling. Like, and then I just want to, that's encouraging. So I think building relationships is the most rewarding part, because I don't look for anything else from anyone, so just getting that thank you or knowing that sign of appreciation is probably it.
Great, thank you. So the next question comes from Brooke. She wants to know, for the entire panel, we've seen the continuing relationship of sports and politics at both the collegiate and professional levels. How do you navigate that in your roles?
I'll start because I feel like I'm really lucky. Monumental Sports has been very vocal. They don't shy away from this type of stuff. They, during the summer, we're very vocal with Black Lives Matter. We very much support the LGBTQ plus community. We have a float in the Pride Parade every year. They are very involved in, making sure the WNBA gets the recognition that they deserve. So for me, it's kind of easy because Monumental puts it out there, and that's our company stance, and they make it very clear. But, obviously when the Caps announce their Pride game every year, the social media comments, I do not envy our social media managers because those comments are pretty awful. And, thankfully, I don't get a ton of it as a salesperson, but when we do get it, it's our policy for the most part is just don't engage, with those emails and those comments. But I'm very, very lucky. Monumental Sports is not perfect by any means, but we are very clear on our stance that, we know the two intermix, and we would like to, be leaders in those areas.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, with the NWSL right now, very similar, very vocal about being at the forefront of some of these issues. The challenges, some of the teams are less so. So, even for me with the Spirit, to be honest, I do a lot of trying to teach I'm the only executive that's a person of color there right now. We are absolutely working to change that. There's new ownership that's only been there since 2019. So all of these changes, were going to happen in 2020. So we had to put a halt on that. But we have a new owner and then a new ownership group, which includes people like Chelsea Clinton and Jenna Bush, SD Portnoy, who's Michael Jordan's right-hand person. So there are all these really great investors that are there now. And I think some of these investors are really going to have to, with the investors, the team's just going to have to up their game, because the expectation is we're inclusive. We take stances on things. As Ashley mentioned, Monumental, again, has always been amazing at doing that. And, our core ownership group, they want to, but they don't really know even what to do. You know what I mean? They're older and they're kind of like, tell us what we should do on this, and we'll support the players. And, we have a number of very vocal players as well who are leading the charge, but we're still kind of a newish league too, right? So it's just everybody's trying to find their way. Last year during the Challenge Cup was really hard for a lot of the players, because not everybody was on the same page with some of these issues and some of what we wanted to do or what they wanted to do collectively, and so that caused a lot of internal issues that we had to deal with. But I don't think it's like a black and white answer, right? It's an ever evolving, and it's a conversation, and it's an education, and it's a learning, and it's an evolving that I think for the Washington Spirit anyway is going to continue. But it's important to talk about. It's uncomfortable, but it's important, and I'm really proud of our players for having these conversations and leading these conversations and understanding the importance of talking about these things.
Does anyone have anything else? No? Okay. Well, then the next one comes from Shannon. She says, with your insights into the industry, do you have any recommendations on how to better support female sports teams that often do not receive the same attention as their male counterparts?
I can take this first. First off, hey, Shannon. Since I've worked with men's and women's sports, I think for my role as an SID is the same regardless. I have to do game notes. I have to do media relations. I have to do the same stuff on the website, the same stats every day, the same marketing at best that I can do from my perspective. But on the other hand, and you're seeing it, obviously, Shannon's probably watching right now. It happened with the NCAA tournament, which is crazy. The amount of money that goes back in is different. So from your personal efforts, I give the same amount of effort, which my husband makes fun of me all the time, but I give the same amount of effort to tennis that I do to volleyball, that I do to men's basketball, regardless of the stage. Those student athletes are people. So how wrong of me if I didn't give player of the week to field hockey because they're field hockey, so from an SID perspective, and probably from a PR general perspective, you have to give the same, whether it's men or women, girls or boys. But from the top, the money is where the change is in college athletics as well. But on the other hand, men's basketball for us brings in the money. So it's a hard thing to manage. But for me personally, I'm going to give the best that I can equally, because that's just how I feel about it.
Right. And I can chime in just really quickly from a professional women's soccer standpoint. Just yesterday, the NWSL signed 2 league-wide sponsors, Nationwide Insurance and Ally Bank, huge sponsors. Last year during a pandemic, they signed Amazon, Twitch, CBS. So our Challenge Cup and our Fall Series games were on CBS. It's pretty much unheard of what's happening with the NWSL really, really quickly. The Spirit, for example, we have 4 sponsors on our jerseys. Nobody else has 4 sponsors on our jerseys, and they're big ones. CVS Health on the front, Sandy Spring Bank, Progressive. and then a women's soccer organization. So I feel as though for the first time, again, in my experience, that the tide is kind of turning with the sponsor support. And that's going to be imperative, our sponsors, league-wide and teams, as well as putting us on TV, giving us the visibility, like having that coverage. It's not perfect, but I feel like over the last few years, there has been a little change of tide, so to speak, with people understanding that women's sports is a really untapped market, and that it's 100% worth the investment. So I definitely hope to see more of that.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So I got one message and then another one just came in that I'm going to combo them. But the first one was to Michaela, who's our more recent grad. And then Rose has said that their teenage son and daughter are both listening tonight with them, and they're interested in careers in sports. What advice would you give them? And then the other question was, can you talk about your time at Maryland and how you got to where you are, right out of college? So if you want to start, and then we can open it up to everyone.
Yeah, so I actually didn't answer this question earlier when we talked about it, but I graduated from high school really, really young, really small high school, had no idea what I wanted to do, but knew that I loved sports. And I actually ended up going to Montgomery County Community College, which turned out to be a really good choice for me because I got a bunch of credits, saved up a bunch of money. So my parents were happy about that. And then I went to Maryland and went to the business school. Still kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but I got into a good business school, so I was happy with that. And I was doing kind of anything and everything. So I started working as a nanny, and then for 3 boys who played a bunch of sports, so it was kind of sports in its own way. And then I started working selling infield tickets to the Preakness, which is basically like a festival. And then I actually got a part-time job with the Wizards. So I was just applying for anything and everything on Teamwork Online. So that's my advice, is go to Teamwork Online and have it bookmarked. And every time you see something, apply for it. I was so fortunate to get the job I have with the Washington football team. I had an internship there, and I kind of just continued to look for opportunities, and luckily, I worked my butt off and made a good impression. So that would be my biggest advice, is just work really hard with that opportunities that you do get, or multiple opportunities, and really try to prove yourself, because your name and your reputation is really important. And I think the longer I've been in this industry, the more I'm learning that. And even though I haven't left to go to a different position, I've had a lot of people, come and go from the Washington football team. And I know that, if they're somewhere now, I could hit them up and say, hey, do you have any opportunities? And it's COVID right now, so it's a little bit difficult. But I know that based on their impression and my reputation, that they'd be able to help me out. So that's my advice. Work really hard and make a good impression, because it will last.
And don't be afraid to volunteer or just do the things that no one else wants to do. It could be something that may be perceived as small, but that work ethic and people seeing your willingness to just dive in and do, it goes a long way. And then you eventually get someone who will actually champion for you and advocate for you, and those positions come up, and they'll think of you. So it's just don't be afraid to, be like, oh, well, that's not good enough, or I don't want to live in, the middle of nowhere. I've went to grad school in Louisville, Kentucky. I've lived in Birmingham, and then I've, went to Orlando by myself, and just because it was an opportunity for me just to keep going in my career. So it's just the little things, volunteering to do things, grinding, and just, sometimes you don't complain, right. You just don't complain, you just do it. You can complain when you get home, talk to your sibling or your friends, but all of that experience is good experience. And that's what you have to do in order to progress and listen. Like a lot of people don't want to listen and they don't want to be patient. Be patient, take your time, learn your craft, and it'll all come together. Just work hard.
And just to chime in on that real quick, I tell young people this all the time: get as many internships and volunteer opportunities. And I had a professor, Dr. Vandervelden, at Maryland. Yes. And he told me, get your degree and whatever you want. But the most important thing is your internships, your work experience. He's like, it doesn't matter what you get your degree in. What matters is the actual practical experience that you leave this university with. And so I did. I switched my major to sociology, but I just every semester I had an internship. So when I left, I had all of this great work experience and references of people in the sports industry. And that was some of the best advice that I've ever received in my life, and the advice that I give to people now. I also went to a community college for 2 years to save money and build up credits. That's another piece of advice that I give to people all the time. But it's people are paying attention to what you're doing, right? So if you're doing things with a smile on your face that maybe other people don't want to do, like your, supervisors, people are really going to notice that. You might not think that it's a big deal, but it is a big deal. And that's going to make you stand out from other people. So, just put in the work. If you're an intern, you're an intern. You're going to do some things that aren't great, but the people that matter and who can help you going forward are paying attention.
I'm going to also chime in on that. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are following March Madness, if you're following the NCAA tournament, the majority of those people working, COVID times, it's a little different, but are all volunteers. Nobody's paid, except for, the main NCAA staff that's their job. But when we run the regional in Manhattan, I have a group of 16 volunteers, age ranging from older than me to in college to younger, that help do the most minimal task. I send them down to the credential table for hours on end. Obviously I swap them so they could see some games, but volunteering, I know there's certain laws in New York for sure about internships for free. There's laws in place, but if you're a volunteer, it's different. Volunteering is so key. I got my job at the Big East. Well, I did work at St. John's for a few years, but I made the contact. I knew it was opening because I volunteered at the NCAA regional in 2014. I sat outside of a credential table for 4 hours and checked people in. I mean, I was already 20 something years old. That could be above you, but I mean, if you want to work in sports, everyone wants to work in sports. So you need to build the contact list, and the smile on your face is a really good point too. You don't want to see people don't want to see you bored, or you don't want to be the person that they don't want to ask to do the task. You want to be the person that, hey, can you please, well, Prescott is one of my favorite volunteers. I've had him for almost 10 years, which is crazy. He volunteers for everything. He's my favorite, and he'll do anything. He'll even tell someone to leave. Like, he's great. So you want to be that person.
Awesome. Well, we are at a little over 8. So with that, does any of our panelists, any last minute things to add, pressing statements you didn't get to say? Well, if not, I just want to thank all of you guys for speaking with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Both Ashley for DC Terps and as a panelist, thank you, Ashley, and Montgomery County Terps. We definitely know that there's a lot going on, everyone, and you're zoomed out. So just the fact that you guys as panelists came to speak and everyone who joined tonight, just know that we're thankful. And we did record this session. So if there's anyone you want to share it to, we're going to make that available. And we will be putting both DC and then I'll add Montgomery County social media in the chat, but you can find both of us. We're both on Facebook and Instagram, Terps in DC and Montgomery County Terps. And then April is Do Good month for the university. So Montgomery County's event is Wednesday, April 21st, and it's about how do you make a difference as a volunteer. And we're going to have a similar, more open, a different open panel about how to volunteer in nonprofits and organizations with specific focus on the environment. So if you're interested in that. And then DC on Friday, April 30th is doing Beautifully DC Bingo, and it's a DC Do Good virtual challenge, which sounds really cool.
It's
So
actually technically all month long. It's just how we have to set it up in the. So
okay, yeah, all month long.
All month long. If you pick up a piece of trash, you get to check off the bingo card. It'll be up on our social media tomorrow.
Awesome. Yeah, they're very social media forward, which is great. And then one more last event is there's a series that the Alumni Association called the Sound On series, and Montgomery County's event is also in April, on April 27th, and it's all about plants. So basically it's an open forum discussion. If bring your plant question, we're going to have a speaker who owns her own landscape architecture firm. But any question on plants you have, my extent of plant knowledge is in Animal Crossing, but I'm happy to attend and maybe learn some real plant skills because I don't have any. But anyways, not about me. But thank you all for joining, and to the panelists, thank you guys so much. I know you all work incredibly hard, and you know, especially Kristen coming up with all of the sports. I know Big Ten, and it is, you guys got a lot, all of you have a lot going on. So we really appreciate it. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.